Veterans Day is to thank and recognize all the veterans across the country that have served this great nation so that we could have the freedoms that we have now. Tonight, we're here especially for the veterans that we've interviewed for the Veterans History Project. And we're proud tonight to have the Vanderbilt Naval ROTC to post the flowers. I don't think they're flowers. Post the colors. Gentlemen, ladies, if you would stand for the posting of the colors.
Forward. Arc. Left. 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 Right. Left. Left.
I've got 4 brothers that served in the military, and one of them is going to lead us in the pledge. James Kenneth Lee, my brothers, served in the Navy for 23 years. Ken?
If everyone would place your right hand over your heart, facing the flag, and follow me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Let's sing our national anthem together. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Hoorah!
As I had mentioned, I do have 4 brothers, older brothers that served in the military. Another one of my brothers that served in the Air Force is going to return to grace for us tonight. William Henry Lee served in the United States Air Force. Billy?
And get through it. I love this crowd. Lord, we thank you for bringing us together this day and for sharing between friends, family, and veterans. On this day, we will remember all veterans who served in the armed forces of our nation. We are grateful for their service and sacrifice. We pray that you would bless and protect all our people, Grant us the wisdom to seek your will in all that we do, and the courage to follow in the directions you would have us go. May we always know the blessings of freedom purchased at so great a cost. We ask that you watch over and protect our men and women. Bless this food prepared for us, that it may nourish and strengthen us. We thank you for bringing us together and ask that you watch over us as we return home. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Billy. Okay, y'all be seated now. You know, as I kind of look out over all the faces I see around here, it reminds me of many of the stories that I heard during the interviews. You know, such as the jet pilot had terrible trouble on takeoff. Got to the end of the runway, he couldn't stop because it's too late. He was near a populated area, so rather than take a chance on crashing in the populated area, he turned his plane, crashed into the mountain. That's the type of people we have here. Also, makes me think of the dangers of patrolling in the North Atlantic, particularly in the wintertime. Also heard about dodging bullets in Bosnia. There's lots of stories, because every time I look at somebody, I think of a different story. But you know, the one thing that I heard most often, I'm not a hero. I mean, there was so many of you that said, I'm not a hero. But you had something to do. You were called to do a job. And when you were called, you answered the call and did the job. And what is a veteran? A veteran is someone who at some point in their life had a check in their hand and they signed that check. That check was made out to the people of the United States of America up to and including their very life. They had this check, handed it to us, and said, cash this check in whatever amount is required from it. So every one of you in our eyes are heroes. And we want to thank you.
You'll recognize this melody because we just sang it, but a lot of people are unfamiliar with this verse. Such strong lyrics, celebrating all of you, what you mean to our nation. Oh, the sweet ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace. May the heaven rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the whole of the brave.
Tonight, we have some cadets, junior ROTC cadets from Franklin High School, and also from Centennial. And like many of y'all, when called upon, they volunteered. And they're here to serve us tonight. It had to be these. Enjoy your food. If you want seconds, raise your hand and we'll try to get you seconds. And here we've got April is going to sing for us. April. Esther and I could convey to y'all just how much this program is y'all participating in and what does it mean to us. It has just been such an honor, a privilege to interview all of you. I really wish that I could just, thank y'all more than what we're doing here. Y'all just done so much more for this country. But what we would like to do now is play a DVD. And this DVD lists all of our heroes. Thank you. Thank you very much. I did get just a little bit ahead of myself. One of the people I wanted to thank is Colonel Greg Hoover. Colonel Hoover, retired Army, but he's the one that's responsible for bringing the ROTC cadets here. And we want to thank them for the great job that they did. Cadets, thank you. Now, we've got a couple of speakers for you. I think 3 lined up. And one of them is the wife of one of our veterans, is Garnett Hogan. She's going to come up and tell us a little bit about Hogan's experience and what it means to her. Ms. Hogan.
I want to share with you tonight just a little bit about what it meant to Guy to make his DVD. And before I start that, though, I do want to recognize we have one other veteran who's gone to be with the Lord, and that's Claude Bryant. And all of you probably knew Claude and what a wonderful person he was, so I did want to say that before I started. We were at Senior Link meeting one night, and Esther and Mr. Lee, and Phil, I'm a little nervous, talked about the Veteran Project, and that Guy was a lover of history, so that just really meant a lot to him. On the way home, he said, I'm going to do that, I want to do that. So that was what started the process. He felt like this would be a legacy that he could leave for his children and his grandchildren. Guy was born and raised in Mississippi. He loved history, and our family heard many stories many times about his days in the Army. and his childhood. He said that even as a child, he thought he wanted to be in the Army. I'm sure he was out shooting guns somewhere. But he joined the Boy Scouts and became an Eagle Scout. He joined the Civil Air Patrol when he was in high school. And when he attended Mississippi State, he was in the Air Force ROTC. Not long before he graduated from Mississippi State, he was approached by the Army Security Agency recruiter. He had been recommended for the Army Security Agency. So he went through all the interviews and all of the security clearance. He said they even talked to his Sunday school teacher. He graduated from Mississippi State on August the 12th, 1961, and left the following day for Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Following his ASA school in Fort Gordon, Georgia, he was assigned to North Camp Drake near Tokyo, Japan. His flight to Japan turned out to be a 12 days of stormy seas on the USS Breckenridge from Oakland, California. And coming back, he had his flight orders and everything, and guess what? He came back on the same ship, 12 more days of stormy sea. He was a crypto specialist, and telecommunications was his area. And of course now everything is all on computer and everything is so different. But back then, the teletype was one of the major ways that they got their information. Two significant things happened while Guy was in Japan. The first one was in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he said they were locked in their building for several days, didn't even leave their post because they didn't know exactly what was going to happen. And the second was the assassination of President Kennedy. And so the same thing happened again. Many of Guy's buddies left Japan and went straight to Vietnam. And in 1991, Guy and I made a trip to Washington, D.C., and we went to the Vietnam Memorial, and he took a piece of paper and sketched over it to get the names of some of his buddies that he had served with in Japan. He kept in touch with those who did come back, and he would get phone calls, and we would get Christmas cards, and somebody would be in town, and they would call, and we would meet them for dinner. But he did go to, I think it was 3 of the different reunions, and he loved every minute of it. Some of the things that he said that he learned in the military that just helped him all through his life: loyalty to country, faithful to duty, be the best you can be, discipline in all aspects of your life, and putting others before yourself, camaraderie and bonding of friends. While Guy was in Japan, he decided that he would do a little sightseeing while he was there for 3 years. So he decided, he and a bunch of buddies decided they wanted to climb Mount Fujiyama. So they hired a truck to take them halfway up, and then they climbed through the ashes all the way to the top at night so that they could see the sunrise over Japan the next morning. On the way down, he lost his footing and slid a long way and broke his flag. I brought the flag, I'll show you in a minute, but he glued it back together and taped it back together, and it still sits in the corner of our den. This was August of 1963. He had always wanted to play football. He never had the chance in high school because he had 2 paper routes, morning and afternoon. He never had the chance at Mississippi State because, first of all, he probably wouldn't have made the team. He wouldn't want me to say that, but he barbered his way through college. That's how he paid his college tuition, was being a barber. So he had all kinds of hours to work. So he had the opportunity at Camp Drake. They had football teams, and so he joined, and his team won the championship, and we still have the trophy. He also visited Hiroshima because he wanted to experience the trauma that had taken place in that place. And he said he felt like that many had lost their lives there, but many had come back to rebuild Japan. He was discharged from the Army in 1963 at Oakland, California, and he had been gone from home 3 years, and much to his mother's dismay, he caught the Greyhound bus and rode it all the way back across the country so that he could see his precious country since he'd been gone for so long. After arriving back in the States, he went back to Mississippi, and He got a job as a sales representative for a plastic pipe company, and then in 1966 he was transferred to Nashville. Guy and I lived next door to each other in an apartment at the Villager West Apartments. Some of you will know where that is, on Fairfax Avenue. We actually met at the Dempster dumpster. We both were taking our garbage out together, so that's how we met. We met in December and married in August. Both of us were a little bit older, though, than some of these people. But anyway, we have two wonderful children. Both of them are with me tonight. Miller, our son, is an attorney here in Nashville. Carrie, our daughter, is a special ed teacher in Metro. They've given us 5 wonderful grandchildren that I just enjoy so much. Guy was serious about preserving his experience in the military, and the story is now being told, and he would be so proud. Let me show you a couple of things. This is the flag that he carried all the way up to the top and then fell coming down and broke part of it. Josh asked me a while ago what I was doing with a Jap flag here. And then he kept talking about wanting to put his patches and his different buttons and things in a shadow box, and we just never got around to doing it. And I came home one day, he was a big shopper, and he had bought this shadow box and he did it himself. So we have that to keep of his Army memorabilia too. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kentucky. The next speaker we have coming up here, most of you probably know. You've seen that smiling face on the other side of the microphone whenever he was doing your interviews. Commander Brian Allen's been gracious enough to do the interviews. He's just been invaluable to us on it. His military expertise, wit, and charm. Well, won't say any more. Commander Brian Allen. Oh, by the way, the commander is still in the Navy, still serving us in the Navy. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I always honored to come and spend time in this distinguished company of people. I think probably some people will feel like, that they're doing less for me than I am for them, but that's not true. I get so much more out of these interviews. I've been amazed to hear the stories. You know, I've been in the Navy 26 years, and I haven't done a quarter of the things that this room has done. And I first thank you for that, and enjoy it very much. You can see, I found out recently that I've had several relatives that have passed on that served in places like the Battle of the Bulge and Normandy, and places like that. They never talked about it. And I kind of felt bad that I didn't get to hear their experiences before they went on. So it's kind of almost a blessing to meet all of you and hear from you and see what you, and even the folks who didn't serve in a combat zone, just the stories of that time of American life are amazing to me. There's people in this room that are probably going on to serve that would love to hear those stories and probably need to hear those stories. As you see our country, the way it's moving, and I won't make this a political statement, but there's less and less people that are leading our country on the civilian side that have any military experience. And I think that shows on the decisions that are made in the way our country's headed. We need the people that like you to tell the stories and keep it going. My father-in-law, and I understand it, and like Phil said, nobody here will say, I'd stand up and say, yes, I'm a hero. You're doing your duty. You did what you thought was right. And talking to Captain Bell, we know some people growing up that they enlisted when they were in their teens. They lied about their age so they could go to where the action was. And you can't get away with that these days. But you could back then, and because they needed people. They needed them, and they signed up. And I think our country's still in good hands as far as that goes. But we'll be in trouble the day that those people stop doing that. Our youth that come up and don't think it's worth fighting for this country and what it stands for. We hear a lot about the political side. We do this, we do that. But there are a lot of people out there, and it starts in my time frame, just in Grenada. We thought, why are we invading that little country? Well, you talk to the few medical students who were down there, they were more than excited to see a group of Marines show up that day and take them home. And you know, that's happened from that time on. You know, a lot of people look to us and go, why aren't you helping us, you know, as other countries? We're not the world's policemen, but we do stand for something. And that stand is, you know, for the right to have a vote, and the right to say something, and the right, like our pastor said this morning, he doesn't have to worry about someone turning him into the government officials because he's going to preach a sermon that may be contrary to popular opinion. That's why we have a military. That's why we need to be strong. I've been in from some flag ceremonies recently and with some retired folks, and it does my heart good to see the young people respect the flag. I think we've lost a little bit about that too in our schools. I know I grew up where we said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and we stood and we sang "My Country 'Tis of Thee." And I saw my kids grow up and they didn't really do that in their schools. And I'm not sure why, but we have a legacy though that's left from these people in this room and people like you. And I think there's, I don't know what the count is, Phil, but there's hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews on the website. And I could sit there and listen to those all day long. And I appreciate that from you, and I thank you for it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I think as you're sitting out there, I would say the youth of our country are still signing up and volunteering. They still believe in our causes. And the other side of that is, you know, my father-in-law was in Vietnam. He didn't have a very nice welcome home when he got home. And I think that's part of the reason he doesn't talk about his experiences. But since then, I think we've learned as a country, and the people have been treated, the sailors, airmen, Marines, and soldiers that have come home have been welcomed with open arms by the citizens, no matter what their political leanings. And I think that does wonders for our military and for our country. And it speaks volumes about what we stand for. So I thank you again, and enjoy your evening.
Cliff's going to sing another song for us. Thanks, Cliff.
This song was just mentioned, and I'd love for you to sing along if you'd like to. Let's celebrate our country. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. My native country, land of the noble free, thy name I love. Thy rocks and reefs, thy woods and temple leaves, my heart with rapture thrills, like that our fathers God to thee, honor of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King. Protect us by thy might, great God our King.
A lot of talent in the group. Thank you. Cliff, thank you very much. And thank you, April, for being here too. Thank you again. Let's give them a big hand. They did a beautiful job. Thank you. Next speaker that we have, going to speak for us a few minutes, Dr. David McCoy. And Dr. David McCoy served in the Army. He is currently, or after the Army, he was in 23 years in private practice. He is now at Veterans Hospital downtown Nashville in the post-deployment department. Dr. McCoy, the floor is yours.
We rearrange just a moment. And also, we have a special thank you that Jenny had wanted to share. Jenny, if you would come back.
Hi. Not many people know who I am, but you know my parents. I'm Jenny Lee, and my mom and dad is Esther and Philip Lee. And their mission is to preserve the military history. And I wanted to thank them and tell them I'm very proud of them. And they're doing such a great job, and I'm just so thankful for them. Without them, we wouldn't be here tonight. So thank you, Mom and Dad.
I'm very grateful for Philip and Esther. I'm excited about a project we're working on together called the Museum of the American Military Experience. And we have some of the display materials out in the foyer and some of the cards we'd love for you to take with you and get on the website and look at some of the things we're working on together to preserve our American military experience. And it's not just the stories from the veterans themselves, but it's also the experiences the families have gone through. And I'm excited about the opportunity to share some of those stories today. And also, a big project that we've had as a museum was In the Footsteps of Sergeant York, and we have some of those flyers out there. That display opened at the military branch of the State Museum downtown just yesterday. And we'll be here in Nashville with that In the Footsteps of Sergeant York for 6 months, and then it's going to go to the Pink Palace in Memphis. We hope to rotate it around the state, 2 or 3 more locations, and then take it on a national tour in hopes that it will end up in France in time for the centennial celebration of the American involvement in World War I by 2017. And that's exciting that we're getting to save and preserve some of that history for future generations. I wanted to share some tonight from the stories from my grandfathers and a few others. First, some background. As Philip had sort of alluded to, I've been doing this for quite some time. I started collecting when I was 9 years old, and it started off with Civil War relics on Lookout Mountain, climbing up there with the Boy Scout troop. Got up there and there was a shoebox with these relics for sale, and I thought, man, this is really something. You can still get these mini balls. So I ended up with 4 mini balls. That was the start of this long, lifelong obsession. After collecting Civil War relics, I started when I was 9 with a metal detector, battlefields, campsites, chasing after the Civil War stuff all over the country. And also starting at 9 years old, every gift that I ever got for Christmas or birthday, it was always either a military artifact or something about the military. So the dream started building on itself. The first World War I relic I ever got was my grandfather's helmet. And his brother had made that into a lamp. That really upset my grandfather. It's not a lamp anymore, you can tell. He tore it all apart, told Clyde to leave his stuff alone. It was exciting. My grandfather's name was Claude Johnson. He didn't really have a middle name. He made one up occasionally. And it's kind of like the person doing genealogy research. It's like everyone's nightmare if they keep changing their name. Sometimes it was Claude without an E, and sometimes it was Claude with an E. And he used various middle names according to his mood at the moment. He was one of those that had lied about his age to get in the Army when he was 16. And he crossed state lines. It was from Dayton, Tennessee, and he went to Camp McClellan, Alabama, and enlisted there in the Army for World War I. It's interesting that my first book about World War I was this one right here, one of the Big Little books. This one's called The Great War Stories of World War I. I started getting finally off from Civil War relics and really collecting World War I, though, to an obsessive extreme like my wife could tell you. in about the first year of medical school, and I was in school here at Vanderbilt. I was on by this time, an Army Health Profession Scholarship program that they were sending me to school in exchange for year-for-year payback coming back into the Army. And it was an interesting time to be in the Army. We've talked about it and applied some of the issues where it's waxed and waned over the years. At that time, it was shortly after Vietnam, and definitely military service was on the wane. It was not nearly so popular. It was exciting today being downtown for the Veterans Parade, the 2 o'clock parade downtown. An amazing representation of the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans coming back, and just an outpouring of attention. It's changed even in my lifetime, from what it was after Vietnam to the way these fellows are getting received now. But I started collecting World War I during medical school because I met up with this veteran who's, some of his artifacts are outside, and that's what those pieces that are displayed here right outside in the foyer. Mr. Eichenlaub was an Army nurse, and he was in 3rd Division, Rock of the Marne, in World War I. And it was fascinating because he was there some of their big battles when the Germans had tried to force the end of the war, and the Americans were really just in time as they were getting up to the Marne River crossings to try to defend them. The French were falling back and urging the Americans to fall them back, that the end was near. And the 3rd Division wasn't going to fall back. It was the same with the Marine Corps in Belleau Wood, you know, retreat hell, we just got here. And the Americans have had a way of doing that over and over again in different settings. And Mr. Eichenlaub was right there with the 3rd Division, was litter bearer and was clearing companies, clearing wounded there in that battle. That's his barracks bag out there. The blue bag is what a duffel bag looked like in World War I. That was his helmet that is out there too, with the 3rd Division insignia painted on it. And it was fascinating, the stories that he told me, one of the World War I veterans that I had gotten to know. His yard-long pictures out there. And it's a fascinating story, and we'll kind of come back to this theme over and over again. Who's going to save this if you all don't? And if you don't put it together and tell it to your children and tell it to their children, that it gets saved and passed along. And Mr. Eichenlaub, his son, after he had died, brought back all the letters that I had written to him and the letters he'd written to me, and gave me the correspondence to save with his material. And he called from Battle Creek, Michigan, and talked with my wife and said, we're passing through, we'll bring that yard along. And Dad's brassard, his diary, his medals, all the rest of his World War I mementos, we want to keep it together, will you take care of it? And it's like, yeah, I'm there. That's what I live for. And sure enough, brought the yard along and showed us which soldier in the picture was his father. And you know, you look at all those yard longs, all those pictures, World War I, World War II, and ever since that have been saved, you look at those groups of the soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen, those are somebody's kin. And who were they? And we don't know if someone hasn't passed along the story, but they called him Ike at the time. Ike's son told us about it and had us save that. The focus always, though, for me, wasn't about the artifacts, it was about the stories. And now I was really off on a binge after Mr. Eichenlaub and talking to him and the things he saw and did. My grandfather's stories had kind of gotten me started, and his were written. His nickname for me was Little Mike. My middle name's Michael. My grandfather's nickname I gave him was Big Mike, had nothing to do with his name, but he took it right in stride. And I've still got the correspondence, notes and things he sent back and forth to me. I still remember a few of the stories that he told me. He told me about sunny France, and it started raining right before the American involvement in Meuse-Argonne about the middle of September 1918, and it rained till after the armistice. It rained every day, to some degree, heavier, lighter, mixed with snow, but it rains off and on every day. He talked about sunny France and how it never was in his experience. And he told me about how he lost all the hair on his legs from the level of the knees down because the mustard gas was so ever present, and he didn't have the puttees off for 6 weeks. That being impregnated with the mustard, it was kind of like the perfect hair removal technique. So he never had hair on his legs below his knees. He finally died with complications of COPD in 1967 when I was 8 years old. But you know, the Camel cigarettes did a lot for that too. And it's neat to realize the legacy, these folks, they could teach us all kinds of lessons. he had an ongoing argument with a French woman that my uncle had married, and my grandfather, till the day he died, understood and spoke French fluently after being in service in World War I. So he would argue with my aunt about how awful France was. And so that was always fun on the family get-togethers. My other grandfather, I got another grandfather when I was 9 years old, when my first grandfather died. Within a year, from 1967, I met up with this man out hunting the Civil War relics, Don Grove. And he took over. He was from Loudon, Tennessee. I grew up in Oak Ridge in East Tennessee. And Mr. Grove, and you know, it's funny, until the day he died, I never called him Don. I always called him Mr. Grove. It was a different time. And Mr. Grove, he took over from my grandfather, had been an Army First Sergeant in World War I. His photograph is out there, and the German belt buckle on a leather piece that he had carved. It's out there in the showcase on the right side of the foyer. He could do no wrong. This was a classic experience for me as a grandfather growing up, because by this time, you know, I was able to understand a whole lot more, 9, 10, 12 years old. But I never realized till I was in college he'd never been overseas in World War I. And in World War I especially, there was a pecking order. You were in service, you were overseas, you were in combat, you got wounded in combat, you got decorated for getting wounded in combat. So it was definitely that hierarchy. I didn't know that Mr. Grove, my grandfather, was on the bottom of their totem pole. But he was active in the American Legion. His American Legion book is out there too. His unit history, he was in an Army mechanic school that was at University of Tennessee, Chihuahua Park. And it's fascinating. I looked at it again today, and yesterday as I was getting all this together. In that history, he has it inscribed, devotedly dedicated to the girl who is waiting for me from your soldier boy. And it has his wife's name that he did marry, Ori M. Collins. And then I had a testament of his. I was getting it out to put in the showcase, picking some pieces. There's a khaki testament right out there in the little showcase. But it was said to Don P. Grove from Agalee. Agalee. That's not Ori. And I thought, well, this must be another girlfriend of Mr. Grove's. And I'd always thought it. I'd seen it before. Getting it ready, I flipped it open, and in a penciled inscription on one of the next to the last pages in that Bible, it had this inscription, Dearest Don, take this little book as a lamp unto your feet and a guide to your pathway. Take the man Christ Jesus as your donkey. God bless and save and bring you home again, our precious soldier boy. Grandma Agalee. And so Agalee wasn't a girlfriend, that was his grandmother. And it's fascinating history like that is saved, because it's somewhere that people can put it together in context and realize it tells a story. This book, Inscription in American Legion, talks about one of his proudest achievements. He led Boy Scout troops from about the early 1930s all the way until the mid-1950s for the Tennessee Department of the American Legion. And that's Mr. Grove's legacy. People like me that were influenced by those values growing up. The relics are there too, though. I had some salty stories, some interesting characters I met, and one of the characters I met was a man named Walter Strickland, and it was fascinating. One time, this was after I was already in college at the time, and he was from Oliver Springs, close to home. He was a Distinguished Service Cross winner. I was thrilled to get to go talk with him and hear his stories and his version of events. And I went up, he was one time, it was in May, a little bit chilly out, he's wearing a jacket. He's sitting in a rocking chair waiting on the front porch of his house for me. Strickland and his squad, and he couldn't get anybody to go, because he thought it's going to be certain death if we crawl out of this trench line and these shell holes and start working around behind this machine gun nest. They're looking for the first one to get up. So he manages still to crawl out and get out in no man's land. And his big issue was, wouldn't you know, the first person in the patrol that comes out behind him is Pops. And he was real upset because Pops was this old man in their company. He was in his 30s. And he was sure, that's great, Pops is going to get killed any minute now. And Pops stayed right with him trying to cover for Walter while Walter was killing Germans and working behind this machine gun nest to take it out. But it's cool to realize afterward that comment was even in his Distinguished Service Cross citation, that he managed to take out that strong point without losing even pops, not even the loss of a man. The other story that he told me that was fascinating was as they were pinned down another strong point, another battle, they were pinned down completely on the ground. Those German machine guns were hitting typically 12 to 18 inches off the ground as they were laying down the cover and fire. So if you raised up into that window, they'd take your head off. And so they're all pinned down, facing the mud, and he's trying to turn over, roll over to get clear of it, to get clear of that field of fire that they can advance and take out this machine gun nest, and gets hit right in the right hip. And that machine gun bullet hit him like a baseball bat. He said, just right on the hip, and he immediately started feeling the liquid running down his leg. And he looked at, he could barely turn his head, that soldier, there's 2 or 3 of them lying there pinned down together, and he turned his head finally to him and said, so-and-so, so-and-so, look at my right hip and see how bad am I hit. And so in a few minutes the fire shifts and he manages to turn his head and look at Strickland's hip. And he says, oh, Strickland, you ain't been hit, you just, well, peed on yourself. But the word wasn't peed. And come to find out, the bullet had passed through the canteen and cut in the cover, and when it hit the canteen, it felt like he'd been hit in the hip, and in fact, it just hit the canteen, and the fluid running down his leg was water from the canteen. So Walter Strickland did manage to, of course, survive the war. He was wounded on another occasion, and he just was another one of those people that lit my fire about trying to save this history. One of them was in my church growing up, in Robertsville Baptist Church in Oak Ridge in East Tennessee. I knew this man, Coy Ward, that was a deacon in our church, and I just thought he was the greatest thing ever next to my grandfather's. Got to know him well. He'd been a squad leader in the Marine Corps. He was on Tarawa, and he told me some stories about what he had done in the Marine Corps. He was in the 3rd wave that landed on Tarawa when they were trying to take the beaches. It was early on in World War II. This is how they learned the hard lessons of what you could and couldn't do in island invasions. And Coy Ward had this exceedingly dry sense of humor, just didn't get excited about anything. Now, Strickland got excited about everything. But Coy Ward was just, yeah, that's what happened, yeah, this took place. And so I asked him, he said, I hear you got wounded. And he said, yeah, I got wounded. I asked him, well, how did that happen? Where were you? He said, I was in the 3rd wave that landed on Tarawa. The Japanese wiped out the first 2 waves in front of us. They had to come across, of course, the dead and dying Marines, the 3rd wave trying to get ashore. Coy said there was a pier that came out, and that gave them some cover and fire from the interlocking fields of fire the Japanese had set up with their machine gun fire. And he was able to work his way in along that pier with a bunch of other guys from the squad. And it was so funny. His big thing was, in his squad, they had a single-action Colt pistol that they took turns wearing. And it just so happened, on this particular day, Coy was the one that they let wear the single-action pistol. So Coy was convinced, this will save my life, you know, I've got the good luck. People were real superstitious about those things, you know. And it was fascinating. He got ashore. They were finally, that 3rd wave took 70% casualties. The 30% of them got ashore, got through the dead and dying, started pushing the Japanese out machine gun nest by machine gun nest. And he said they were firing those light Nambus right on the beach, and they were flying stripper clips that as the stripper clip would run out before they could pop another one in, you could get up and rush forward about 10, 12 yards at a time to get a closer attack position on those machine gun nests. So they're trying to work their way up and around these nests. And he said the clip ran out, I jumped up and said I got hit right in the top of my shoulder, he said right across my chest, but there was all this wood blowing up. By this time they've got close shells firing support from the ships trying to get up, trying to save the invasion. And he said they're blowing up ammunition dumps, there's wood flying through there. I just thought that it was a piece of that wood hit me. They took out that Japanese machine gun nest, and as he was advancing to the next one, decided, man, it's getting hard to breathe. And then one of the other guys looked and said, why, Coy, you've got blood running off the front of your chest. And it turned out that the machine gun bullet, he'd gotten up 1 instant too soon, and it hit him right above the nipple, went out the other side of his back, and dropped his lung. And because of that lung deflation, he couldn't breathe. And it was still amazing. Strickland would have been telling that story for hours. And Coy Ward is just, yeah, I got hit, it hit me right there. I was out for a while, I got better. And he was convinced it was because he was carrying that single action Colt, that was what saved his life, it was the luck of the Colt pistol. My father had been a Navy corpsman in World War II, and his jumper's out there, his ship's book, the Bountiful, is out there. It's his photo and the certificate right there with it. He was at D-Day on 7 different island invasions, and the story he told me that made such an impression, he was at Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Leyte, and Peleliu. And he said Peleliu was the worst. It was the worst. And his hospital ship, typically, as they would start hitting the beaches, the first wave, if they could get ashore, the hospital ship would come up right behind the first wave to start taking off the wounded. And they would be as close as they could get to shore without beach in the ship, to try to get the shortest possible trip for the landing craft bringing the wounded off the beaches. And he said that you'd be up and you'd be seeing what was happening. Peleliu was the only battle where he saw Marines pushed off the shore, fighting in the surf, trying to save each other. And he said, I'll never forget that Marine officer shooting a .45 automatic pistol in water up to his waist, pushed off the shore. And those are things that you think, wow, what pieces of history. This last group that I wanted to talk about, though, is Hubert Hunt's. And Hubert Hunt's is right up here on the left. And that was a fascinating story. Where I grew up, my mother was from Dayton, Tennessee. And visiting my grandmother down there one time, she said, hey, this neighbor across the street has all this pile of stuff that she wanted to see if you'd be interested in to save it for your museum. So since I was 9 years old, this has been the plan. Someday I'll be part of a museum. And what it was Hubert Hunt's pieces. And my grandmother's friend said that they had taken in this older woman, didn't have any family at all. She had actually died. Going through her cedar chest, just a cedar closet, they found all these framed pieces. There's a bunch of them out there to look at. They found a Bible box, and they found a stationery box, his Purple Heart, and just some more correspondence, and would I be interested in it? And it's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And what it ended up being, that was Hubert Hunt, who was in Battery D, 462nd Parachute Field Artillery Battalion. What was there with his photographs and certificates, you can see him out there, his letters, and then the thing that was fascinating, it was the actual telegram that his mother had gotten, that we regret to inform you that your son has been killed in action. The telegram's out there. It's real short. And you think about how life-shattering, life-changing it is. And the rest of the story was fascinating too. Hubert Hunt was an adopted child. He was adopted from a family up here around Crossville. And he was an only child. They had raised him. When he died, she had no one. That's how she ended up there. And she had saved every letter he ever wrote home. He had mailed home from every paycheck he ever got postal money orders, with most of his paycheck getting returned to her. And on his body, when it was recovered, his wallet had all of those postal money order receipts still in it. And it had his Purple Heart, all of those frame pieces that she saved. She saved every piece of correspondence he had mailed home. That was in that stationery box that's out there. And it was fascinating. In that Bible box that's out there on the table, has Jesus on the front of it. Those are the clothes that he came from the orphanage in when he had been adopted. Patches on patches on patches. And it's neat to look at that and that gold star that's out there, the gold star recognition, and to realize the price that had been paid by so many of these folks. and the price that his mother paid all those years, saving all of that stuff, and when she died, who's going to save the story? You know, where will it go? And then finally, I wanted to end it with just a modern day example, somebody that I'd run across with my work at the VA, working with the post-deployment. The sacrifice is still ongoing, and the patriotism and the values and the dedication, it's still ongoing. And I'd run across this fellow, his name's Patrick Brownfield. And his story, the first place it starts to get preserved is here on the front page article, Vanderbilt Hustler, of all things. This is the student newspaper from down at Vanderbilt. This is October 15th. Vanderbilt senior Patrick Brownfield served 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan as a U.S. Marine. And it's fascinating, the story that's in there telling about him. These are some excerpts from it. From 2007 to 2010, Brownfield served 3 7-month tours of duty in the infantry, 2 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. There he was immersed in an extremely stressful, relentlessly dangerous environment. Imagine an 18-year-old kid walking 12 miles in 120-degree heat, carrying 80 pounds of gear, with the constant thought in his head, when am I going to step on an IED, or when is a sniper going to shoot me? Brownfield said, you have to stay in that mindset. If at any given time you let your guard down, that's when the bad stuff happens. We have a saying in the Marines, complacency kills. Born into a military family, Brownfield always knew he wanted to serve his country. I've always had the patriotism, that sense of duty, he said. One of the first things Brownfield did after he turned 18 was contact a recruiter, and he soon found himself deployed to Iraq, living among the populace and participating in counterinsurgency activity. For the first 4 or 5 months, it was completely surreal, he said. You got such a high, such a rush off to going into a firefight or catching bad guys. It wasn't until our unit got our first casualty that we realized that this is real life. This isn't Call of Duty, it's not Battlefield. And an example of that I had run across lately, it's a whole other area for preservation, for historical preservation part of the museum, was a Marine's tattoo that I'd seen as a patient just a couple weeks ago. They've got some remarkable art going into these tattoos now. And on this tattoo, right up here on his arm, it had that kind of classic comment about all gave some, and then it had 5 empty shell casings. And on each empty shell casing, it had a different Marine's name that had been killed in his unit. And his comrades, he decided to commemorate that. And it's all gave some, the 5 empty shell casings, some gave all, with those names. And he'll wear that the rest of his life. On the front lines of the war, Brownfield had to grow up quickly. He was quickly made a team leader, and by his 3rd tour, he had been promoted to section leader, making him responsible for the lives of between 13 and 15 other Marines. For me, I had the responsibility of kids' lives, Brownfield said, and I was still a kid myself. Brownfield had been initially driven to serve by his patriotism and was always motivated in part by his desire to protect his country. But as time went on, he found himself motivated by a different force. I thought, I'm doing this for the guy next to me, Brownfield said. It literally is a band of brothers. That's your biggest motivation, getting the guy next to you back home safely. And that's a quote that it brought to my mind from Goodbye Darkness, this memoir that William Manchester wrote about his experiences in the Marine Corps in World War II. Just a real brief little quote here. It was an act of love. Those men on the line were my family, my home. They were closer to me than I can say, closer than any friends had been or ever would be. They had never let me down, and I couldn't do it to them. I had to be with them rather than let them die and me live with the knowledge that I might have saved them. Men I now knew do not fight for flag or country, for the Marine Corps or glory or any other abstraction. They fight for one another. Any man in combat who lacks comrades who will die for him or for whom he's willing to die is not a man at all. He is truly damned. And it's a fascinating thing how often that's the driving force getting through this day, this night, this issue where truly we're all in harm's way together. They do it for each other. And ask Brownfield, ask if he regretted any part of his military experience. Brownfield didn't hesitate. And if I had it to do all over again, I'd do the exact same thing. And my last comments I would just make, these kind of attitudes and values and priorities don't just happen. It's not by happenstance. We need these vets. We need you vets. And we need your stories. We need an attitude of gratitude. We come from a long line of participants. But it'll only keep lasting as long as we keep producing people willing to lay their lives on the line for each other and for us and for the values that make us so distinctly different. The duty, honor, country motto from West Point fits, and yet it's rare all the time. We have to have the willingness and desire to give back, and that starts on the level in our schools and in our churches and in things like the Boy Scouts, those value systems. And that's it. We're so excited that Forrest came along behind me and went and finished as an Eagle Scout just like I did, just like Mr. Grove wanted me to. It's imperative to pass on to our children and their children these values. And truly, to quote again the scripture, I will leave it with, greater love hath no man that he would lay down his life for his friends. And yet, back to that quote from Agalee in Mr. Grove's Testament, it's that type of love can only come from the God-man, Jesus Christ. And I'm just grateful to be a part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. McCoy. There's always a surprise coming some of the times on these things. And tonight we have one of the Centennial cadets that wants to say a brief word. Cadet Odin.
Hello, my name is Shelby Mazevis Deandra Odin, and I am a JROCT cadet. Well, as I looked around and got to know most of the people here, I've learned a lot. I've seen some things probably you think a young person shouldn't see, but I have. I experienced some things in my life, and I know that America is the greatest country that I have ever been. And I've seen so many people here that wish they could be in this country, wish they could say the Pledge of Allegiance. Some people I see in my classrooms, when they stand up and say the American Pledge of Allegiance and the Star Spangled Banner, they don't even care anymore. They just talk to their friends. But I know I'm willing to stand up and to have my hand over my heart, or to salute the flag every time I see it, to hold a door for another person when they're in need. And I'm willing to help other people too, because of this great country. I was over there with some nice people who invited me to come. And I was crying when the young lady was up here singing, because that's how much it means to me. I am willing to come anywhere and go to the measures, because it's very important to me. Nothing in this world, nothing can change my mind about America, or nothing can make me go somewhere else and say that I'm not an American, because I'm not an American. I'm an American, and I'm proud to be an American. And I'm here to look around and say thank you to everybody that pitched in and put in their effort and their time to be here. And I salute everybody here, everyone. Thank you.
Getting pretty close to wrapping it up now, but I want to say a special thanks to our speakers, Mrs. Hogan, Commander Allen, Bryan, Dr. McCoy, and our cadet. Thank you very much again. Also, we've got a Marine here, Captain Kevin Bell. We want to have, or say a very special thank you to, for bringing your midshipman here. And if you would, please stand while the midshipman retires the colors.
Retire. Poet. Forward. Mark.
Thank you, Vanderbilt University midshipmen. Now, I would be a little remiss here if I didn't thank some of the people that made it really possible for us all to be here. I want to thank all the staff here at Brentwood Baptist Church for the use of their facilities, both here tonight and while we did the interviews too. And I want to say a special thank you to John Dyer. John has saved my bacon more than once whenever I was trying to set up the equipment. Something goes wrong, I holler John, and John comes running. So thank you very much, John. One of the others that helped us put this on, Adam Dye, is back there. Adam Dye is the one that figured out how to play these DVDs that I made that could have been better. And also we want to thank Olin. Olin Crowder's back there filming all this for us. But there's one group of people here that we owe the most thanks to. And I really want to thank them, and that's our veterans. Without you, we wouldn't be here tonight to enjoy the freedoms that we have tonight. When called upon, you gave it all. Thank you very much. Good night, and God bless.